Hey, good morning, everyone. Okay, so let's see with this use case where we wanted to search for a particular postal pin code details and how we wanted to, how we wanted to proceed with this. Let me try to tell you that as well. So there is one standalone application called Postal Pin Code API. This is purely built upon Java. So this API allow you, this API allows you to get the details of a particular pin code if you would use this endpoint URL. If you would use this endpoint URL, if you would use this address, and if you would supply a particular pin code, you would supply a particular pin code to it. So it would give you that particular response, right? It would give you that particular response. So what we are going to do, we would be integrating the Salesforce. We would integrate the Salesforce, and for this, I would be creating a front end as well. I would be creating a front end. I would be create a Visual Force page for this one, and inside in my Visual Force page, like we would going to design an interface where we would ask the user to enter the pin code, and that pin code we would be collecting it inside a text field, and there would be, let's say, a submit button for this. There would be a submit button, and after submitting that, we would going to display this whole information in the form of table below to this. We would be going to display this whole information in the form of table, right? In the form of table, like it would be an arrangement of rows and columns. Of course, we would be going to display this whole information in the form of table. So this is what is the plan, what we are going to execute. So I would be creating a front end for this, but using Visual Force programming. Similar thing can also be implemented with the Lightning IT track. But then there is a little issue which I'm trying to resolve when we are connecting to a third-party system by using an imperative call methods of the Lightning. So there are a little hurdles which is going on, which I'm trying to resolve as early as it would be done. I'm also going to take that as well. Otherwise, we have a successful way to do this, and that is the front end. We would be going to create this front end by using a Visual Force programming. All right. So I would be creating a page like this. In this page, I would give an option to the user to enter the pin code, and there is a action button as well, submit. Once that user would submit, once that user would submit, so I'm going to call a method that would take the value of this pin code, and this whole thing would be transferred as a request. This whole thing would be get transferred to this application of postal pin code API. It would present us this particular response, which as you can see is in the form of JSON. I would perform something called as JSON parsing, which you already which you already know. So I would be performing, because this data is in the form of JSON, I would perform a JSON parsing. I'll convert this data, and then accordingly, we are going to display it in the form of table. So what are going to be the different entities of this? So if you would further see, if you wanted to parse a JSON, you first of all would have to closely observe how does this JSON format looks like to be. How does this JSON format looks like to be? Yes. How does this JSON format looks like to be? So accordingly, we have to build up a parsing class. Accordingly, we would have to build up a parsing class. Now, as you can see, like, if I wanted to split it out, I can see that the first thing which comes over here first thing which comes over here, I can say it's a message. Message. Number of the pin codes found 6. The next thing is a status. Message is the key. Field name, this is the value. Status is the field name, this is the value. Now this value, this value is in the form of array. That means it is displaying it like this, right? It is displaying it like this. Name and then description and then branch type, sub post office, delivery status, circle, and then circle, I guess, district, division, of course, city, then region, and then block, state, country, pin code. Like, see, this is the first response. Like, as you can see, this is the first response. Then if for the same pin code, if there are, for the same pin code, if there are like, I'll just, I would just uh, form like two records over here and we're going to discuss what I'm actually trying to say. Just give me a moment. I would, let me split this and let's have two records for this. So, we would understand what I'm trying to say is pin code. Yes. Now I would be deleting this whole and yes, over here I wanted to delete. Hmm. Okay. See, this type of response is getting generated when you hit that API. When you hit that API, this type of response is getting generated. So these fields, name, description, brand, circle, and all that. If there is, if in a JSON, for example, for a particular pin code, uh, it might return you multiple records. These are common. This is for every response. The value of message and status comes only one, right? It comes only once. But these things could be repeated, and that is the reason, it has been enclosed. It has been enclosed as what? As an array value. Like this is one value. This is one value containing containing the details of name, description, and all. And this is an another. And this could also have certain more values as well. This could also have just a moment. All right. See, the first thing which we always have to say is how does this JSON response looks like to? Because accordingly, accordingly, we are going to create the parser class. So I would going to discuss this again once we would be creating that parsing class. Let me first of all design the front end part, because what I'm trying to say is like from the visual force page, I was going to design a visual force page, and from that visual force page, I would be uh, I would be sending that front end value. I mean, I would be sending that pin code value. All right. So if you are working on to the visual force page, I'm not sure how many lectures if you have seen or not, but I have told you that the visual force page could be created in multiple ways. Right. The visual force page could be created in the multiple ways. The first thing you have to, if you wanted to use something called as a URL method, which is considered to be the most feasible one. We first of all would require to enable development mode. And how to do that, that everything has been discussed in those session lectures, which I have given to you long back. So we first of all would require to go to my setting and expand the personal. Inside in the personal, you have an option called as advanced user details. This one, advanced user details. Now go to this page and first of all click the edit button, and you would going to find a setting called a development mode. This one, development. Now this development mode along with the second one, show view state in the development. These are the two options which ideally, if you would enable this, you can now use URL method as well for generating the visual force page. So what is the benefit of that? Let me show you. So these two settings has to be enabled. These two settings has to be enabled. How to do that? Go to my setting, then personal. Inside in the personal, you have an option advanced user detail. You would be going to see this page, edit this page, enable these two checkboxes, development mode, and show the view state in the development. Once you committed those changes, just save it out. All right. Now you have enabled something called as creating a visual force page from the URL technique as well. Now, what is that technique? What is that technique? So what I'm going to do, go to the URL up to the salesforce.com, then remove everything after that, but keep that backslash, keep that backslash. Listen. By the way, this everything I already have covered in that Visual Force videos. You can watch it around. It's not an issue. I'm just repeating. Now type Apex and again give a slash. Again give a slash. All right. Again give a slash. Then enter whatever the page name you wanted, the Visual Force page you wanted to be created with what name. Just enter it out. So I would be writing like search Indian postal branches page, right? When I put an enter over here, it would try to find out a visual force page with this name. Inside in the directory, it goes and try to find out whether if there is a visual force page with this name. So because there is no visual force page, it is giving a visual force error that there is no such page with this name and the page does not exist. But if you would observe, the good thing over here is like, along with this error message, it is giving us a small link just below to that error. I mean, right now, there is no such page with this name, what you are looking for. But if you wanted to create a page, you can try out with this link. This is what is called as URL method. This is what is called as URL method, and it's the most feasible way. There are other ways as well. You can do this with the developer console. You can also do this with the user interface. There are the options over here in the user interface. Over here, from here, you can also create right? Go to the development mode, and then you go to the Visual Force page, right? And over the Visual Force page, there is a new button. From here as well, you can create. There's another method. You go to the developer console. From there as well, you can create it. But the most feasible way to do this is the URL, this one. But for this one, you compulsorily, you have to enable my setting. Inside in the my setting, you have to enable the developer. All right. So I would be going to make a click onto this because there is no such page with this name, but this is giving me an option that create a page with the name search Indian Postal Branch page details. So I would be clicking this and let's see what happens. Yes. Now, as you can see, one Visual Force page is created. One Visual Force page is created. If you would click onto this, you can see the default coding of that. This is that default coding. So I'm going to do so. Listen one thing. I mean, if I would start explaining you every tab of this, that could take a time. That would take a time. So what I'm going to do would be like, I'm going to copy and paste out this code. And I would try to explain you as much as possible with this. Because for Visual Force page, I have given you the separate recordings of the session. There you have to understand how to create a Visual Force page. What are the different types of tags, what we have used, what is the meaning of tag, how to partitionize the Visual Force page into different sections, how to give the name to individual section, how to render the things inside into. So that everything I have explained in those videos. I guess there are 10 videos, if I'm not wrong. There are somewhere around 10 videos. I have elaborated everything in detail over there as well. So I am going to copy this whole thing. I would be copying this whole thing, right? And then I would try to explain you as far as possible because my intention today is not to teach you Visual Force page. Rather, I have to complete this program, which again is a lengthy program, and I've told you it would probably would require 2 or 3 sessions to get completed, right? So I'm not going to waste your and my time. I would be creating a class for this. So I would be creating a class for this. So if you wanted a class, it's actually a controller class. Not going to give the tab style. Up to this, I'm just going to copy. And inside in my paste tag, I would be removing this default code first of all. And over here, I would be pasting out everything. So when I try to save it, it would try to search any Apex class with this name. Search Indian Postal Branch Controller. And we obviously don't have any such class. So the benefit you would going to see that again, it would give you an interface. It would give you a link to create that class. This is what is a benefit of using URL method. So mostly अभी तो खैर इसमें काम नहीं होता है, बहुत कम. I guess मैंने तो करीब 3 या 4 साल से काम नहीं किया है विजुअल फोर्स पे, और कभी आया भी होगा तो that was not about a fresh development. Obviously, it was something what has been created in the past, and then we do have to refine. We do have to make a certain small adjustment into those things. So that would be a reason where I have used this. Otherwise, इसमें नहीं होता है काम. Anyways, so as soon as I would save this, it would try to search out a class, an Apex class with this name. And because there is no such class with this name, it would give a link that you can press Control S for this if you wanted to save this. See, so or here is a small symbol. Here is a small symbol that you can use. Now it would give you 2 options. Whether do you want it to create a class with sharing or without sharing? with sharing and without sharing. Now, this is the first time when this terminology has been introduced. I wanted to, before going further with this, I wanted to explain what is the concept of with sharing and without sharing at this moment only. And this is a very important interview question as well. This has been asked. This has been asked so many times, multiple candidates have faced this issue, have faced this question. What is a with sharing class and without sharing class? Class, which has been defined as an attribute with sharing, and the class which has been defined without sharing or nothing. When it's nothing, it's without sharing. I would be selecting this without sharing option, right? There's a with sharing, the second one is without sharing. Now let me explain you. Let me explain you, and I'll save this out. See, there is a class, Apex class has been created. So I'm not going to work for this class over here. I would work, I would go to the developer console, and inside in the developer console, I'm going to find out that class. Let me close out every tab over here. I go to the file menu, open, and I would search for a class called Search Indian Postal, which we created this from the front end. So this is that class. Now see, we never has mentioned anything over here, public, right? But if you wanted a class to become with sharing, you have to add it over here. No, I guess public class with sharing here. Or let me check it out. No. It was पहले ही सही था. Public with sharing class. Yes, with sharing class. Now you can save it. The error is going to be get gone. Yeah. So classes are of two types, with sharing and without sharing. Whenever we haven't defined anything, we haven't defined anything. If we haven't mentioned anything, that is always without sharing. That is always without sharing. We have created a lot many classes. All of them, whatever we created so far, that was without sharing. That was without sharing. All right. Now, let me try to describe this. Let me try to describe this. What is the meaning of with sharing and without sharing? See, you can definitely Google this, but let me try to. Classes are of two types. The first one is with sharing, and the second one is without sharing. Without sharing. With sharing is generally called as user mode or user context. With sharing is called as user mode or user context. Whereas without sharing is called as system mode or system context. Without sharing is called as system mode or a system context. Understood? I hope you guys are taking your points as well. You are not sitting as an audience. There is no movie which is going on. All right. So I hope you also are writing this in a proper manner. You are taking your notes right now, at least rough for now. Later on, you can make it fair. So classes are of two types, with sharing and without sharing. See, this what happens, how the topic get extends. How the topic get extends. People usually ask me why you require that much of the time for the training. 8 months, 7 months, 6 months, 9 months. Why you? People are completing this within maybe 3 or 4 months and they are starting a new batch. That is more profitable. That is more profitable. If I would start a new batch, I'm going to get new revenues. That is more profitable. But then definitely there are a lot many things that are getting skipped in that training later on when you come into real time and you realize this. Gradually, slowly you realize this has never been taught to us. This has never been taught to us. Then you have to overcome with those deficiencies by your own. No? And there's only one resource maybe online for your answers, but at least you have not been trained with that, right? I don't wanted you to feel, I don't wanted you to go under those kinds of circumstances. So that is the reason if something is connected with the second topic, I first of all would take that subtopic and later on I'll come to this front, uh, what I was trying to teach you. With sharing and without sharing, this is probably the first time when we are discussing is a very important concept. From the interview point of view, it is very important, and from the implementation point of view, is also very important. For you, everything for now, everything now is for you is actually is more important for interview because you are going to give that very soon. Implementation chalo yaar wo to main later on I would somehow I would going to manage this out. वो तो सिलेक्शन के बाद की बात है ना. सिलेक्शन तक पहुंचने के लिए इंटरव्यूज क्लियर करना पड़ता है. इंटरव्यूज के सिनेरियो दिन ब दिन टफ होते जा रहे हैं. सो अब हल्की फुल्की ट्रेनिंग से काम नहीं चलेगा. ऊपर ऊपर से इफ यू वुड स्विम इनटू शैलो, you were never going to find out the gems and the bottom of sea. So that is what it is. अगर आपको वो चीजें चाहिए, if you wanted to get that treasure, you'll have to go and take a deep dive. वक्त लगता है समझने में, समझाने में, पढ़ने में, पढ़ाने में, right? Classes are of two types, with sharing and without sharing. When we say with sharing, the another name, the more technical name to with sharing is user mode or user context. When we say without sharing, like this class by default, if you won't define anything, you mention without sharing or you don't mention, you don't write anything, that goes to without sharing. That's considered to be without. Particularly for with sharing, if you wanted this to become a with sharing, you'll have to mention it out over here. Public with sharing class, then it becomes with sharing. You don't write down anything or you write down without, both are same. You write down without sharing is without sharing, obviously. You don't write down anything like this. It also becomes without sharing. Without sharing is called as system mode. Without sharing is called as system mode or system context, default context. Default context, system context, system mode. All right. Now, what is the difference between these two? There is a this is very simple to understand. If you yourself don't make any faltu ka assumption, this is very simple to understand. Guys, I don't wanted to ask a question and waste your time and my time as well. But I rather would answer this for you. Because my experiences with you guys is very bad. With this batch particularly, I didn't get any answers so many times. I don't wanted to make you feel embarrassed. Me too. Profiles. We have studied this in the admin part. Profiles. Profiles. All right. Roles, role hierarchy, permission sets. This is what. If I would ask you on a broad level, I am not going to ask you, don't worry. On a broad level, how do you see profiles and role hierarchy or the permission set or the license? How would you see to this? License को थोड़ा सा साइड में रखते हो तो बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाती है. How would you see this? What do you think? What are the use of these out-of-box functionalities of the Salesforce? These features of the Salesforce profiles. Every user has a profile, which is mandatory. There are two things which has to be given for a user creation: license and a profile. Giving a role and permission set and every other thing is optional. That's an optional entity. You wanted to to get or restrict certain functionalities. We accordingly, we go and try to give it either with a permission set or by making a role hierarchy. That's a different story. But chalo, a broad spectrum way, if I wanted to ask you, how do you see and what do you think about profile, roles and permissions? क्या लगता है आप लोगों को कि इसका क्या काम है Salesforce में? So in a single line answer, if you wanted to give, you don't wanted to elaborate is this in detail, which I am also is not expecting. तो हम कह सकते हैं कि देखिए, these are user management part. These are user management part. So if we are having a lot many users, we wanted to categorize them according to what type of rights they have inside in an organization. When we say rights, it depends upon the accessibility. कि भाई एक यूजर है, उसको किस तरह की चीजें एक्सेसिबल होनी चाहिए. That accessibility could be about an object. That accessibility could be about tab. That accessibility could be about field, जो आप field level security से achieve करते हो. That accessibility could be about login IP ranges. And there are a lot many things, right? That accessibility is about CRUD, CRUD, CRUD permissions. create, read, update, and delete permissions related to the objects. So when we say accessibility, accessibility means a lot many things. Either to restrict or to release. I wanted to restrict certain access. I wanted to release certain accesses. So these whole things like profiles, roles, and permission set, ये सारी चीजें जो है ना उन जगहों पर काम में आती है. Profile is the biggest one, like at the top in the hierarchy. You created two separate profiles, and then you would going to give what is going to be the permission sets, right? There are n number of the users. For a certain group of users, they are having system admin profile. For a certain group of user, they are having chatter free profile there. So based on what profile they are having, their access is going to be get decided. The one who is having this access, the one who is having this profile number 1, let's say, and profile number P2, all of those users, user 1, user 2, user 3, which belongs to this profile is a group, in short. They could access certain different entities. All of those users who belongs to this group, P2 group, profile 2, would going to get a separate access, right? If you wanted that access should flow like this, if an object is created, if a record is created, by default, it should get an access to the managers and the managers of the manager. You will set up something called as role hierarchy. If within this group of users, you again wanted to bifurcate something that user 1 and 2 should have this access, 3 and 4 should have that, 5 and 6 should have that. We achieve this with the permission set. So this is what, in short, this is something called as user management, isn't it? User management. So that was a small revision. I feel that this is very important to understand with and without sharing concept. सीरीज होती है यार, देखो एक बात से दूसरी बात, दूसरी बात से तीसरी बात निकलती है. मेरा इंटेंशन है कि आप सब सारी चीजों को अच्छे से समझें. ना मुझे जल्दी आपको कंप्लीट करने की, ना आपको जल्दबाजी होनी चाहिए मुझसे सीख के बाहर निकलने. आपका रेज्यूमे लाइव करना है, आपको नौकरी करनी, मैं जानता हूँ आपको जल्दबाजी है, होनी भी चाहिए. मैंने भी काफी हद तक बोला कि देखो इस मंथ तक, अगले मंथ तक टारगेट करो, लेकिन फिर भी कुछ चीजों पे हमें ठहरना पड़ता है, हमें रुकना पड़ता है, कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट्स को हमें वक्त देना पड़ता है, राइट? With sharing, without sharing is a very important concept. It's a very important concept, and it is closely related to all these things: profiles, roles, and permissions. आइए अभी एक बात करते हैं. मेजरली देखो यार, बहुत सिंपल सी बात. यूजर 1, यूजर 2, यूजर 3. अभी चाहे प्रोफाइल से, चाहे परमिशन सेट से, या रोल हायरार्की से, तीनों में से कोई भी, या तो प्रोफाइल से इनको बाइफरगेटेड किया जा चुका है. मे बी विद द प्रोफाइल्स दे हैव बीन, देयर राइट्स हैव बीन डिसाइडेड कि भाई यूजर 1 क्या एक्सेस करेगा, यूजर 2 क्या करेगा, और क्या चीजें इनसे छुपी हुई रहेंगी. मे बी दैट हैज बीन created, that bifurcation, those access rights have been created, let's say with the profile. ये प्रोफाइल से भी हो सकता है, और विथ अ परमिशन सेट, और या फिर हो सकता है कि इन सबकी प्रोफाइल सेम हो. स्टिल आई वांटेड टू क्रिएट दिस डिवीजन, सो दैट इज बीइंग डन विद द परमिशन सेट. मोटा मोटा कह रहा हूं मैं कि हम ये जानते हैं कि यूजर 1, हम फॉर एन इंस्टेंस लेट मेक दिस assumption that user 1 and user 2 and user 3, all three of them have a different form of accessibility. All three of them have a different form of accessibility. यूजर 1 को कुछ अलग तरह के एक्सेस राइट्स हैं, 2 को अलग है, और 3 को भी अलग है. ठीक है. अब मान के चलते हैं दैट्स देयर इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट कॉल्ड एज अकाउंट. लेट्स से एक ऑब्जेक्ट है अकाउंट, ठीक है, और जिसमें कुछ फील्ड्स हैं, जैसे कि मान के चलिए रेटिंग, आई गेस फोन नंबर भी एक फील्ड है, और जैसे कि मान के चलिए ओनरशिप. ठीक है, ओनरशिप. मैं 3 ही फील्ड ले रहा हूँ, ज्यादा जगह भी नहीं है. हम थोड़ी देर ये समझ के चलते हैं कि रेटिंग इज ओनली एक्सेसिबल टू U1. यूजर 1 को एक्सेसिबल है, जबकि यूजर 2 और यूजर 3 को एक्सेसिबल नहीं है रेटिंग. ठीक है. और ये कैसे किया आपने? फील्ड लेवल सिक्योरिटी से. या परमिशन सेट से थ्रू या प्रोफाइल, दोनों में अवेलेबल। तो या तो आपने परमिशन सेट के थ्रू इसको ऐसा कुछ डिफाइन कर रखा है, और या आपने प्रोफाइल के थ्रू रिस्ट्रिक्ट कर रखा है। बहरहाल जो भी बात है, फोन फील्ड यूजर 1 को एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, यूजर 2 को एक्सेसिबल है, और यूजर 3 को भी एक्सेसिबल नहीं है। ये क्या था? ओनरशिप। मैं डॉक्टर बन सकता था राइटिंग के हिसाब से, बट चलो अच्छा हुआ मैं इंजीनियर ही बन गया। ओनरशिप, ओनरशिप यूजर 1 को भी एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, यूजर 2 को भी एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, और यूजर 3 को भी एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, इजंट इट? ठीक है, चलिए, ये सिनेरियो समझ में आ गया आपको? अकाउंट ऑब्जेक्ट है, अकाउंट ऑब्जेक्ट में कुछ फील्ड्स हैं, रेटिंग, फोन एंड ओनरशिप। रेटिंग यूजर 1 को एक्सेसिबल है, U2 और U3 को नहीं है, फोन U1 को नहीं है, U2 को है, U3 को नहीं है, ओनरशिप U1 U2 को नहीं है और U3 को नहीं है। अब एक प्रोग्राम क्रिएट किया आपने यहाँ, अब इस एंड पर आ जाओ। ठीक है, ये सारा पार्ट आपने प्रोफाइल्स और या फिर परमिशन सेट के थ्रू मैनेज कर रखा है। अब आपने एक एपेक्स प्रोग्राम लिखा, ये एपेक्स प्रोग्राम लिखते वक्त आपने डीएमएल ऑपरेशन परफॉर्म किया। जैसे आपने एक रिकॉर्ड क्रिएट किया, अकाउंट एसीसी इक्वल्स टू न्यू अकाउंट, अकाउंट एसीसी इक्वल्स टू न्यू अकाउंट, देन एसीसी डॉट नेम इक्वल्स टू दिस वन। हाँ, अब देखो, एसीसी डॉट रेटिंग, एसीसी डॉट रेटिंग इक्वल्स टू हॉट, acc dot phone equals to this acc dot ownership equals to private। ठीक है, ये एक प्रोग्राम लिखा है ना, उसके बाद में इंसर्ट, इंसर्ट acc, ये एक प्रोग्राम लिखा गया। अब जब ये जो एपेक्स प्रोग्राम है, ये एपेक्स प्रोग्राम ये तीन फील्ड्स को यूज कर रहा है। inside in this apex program we are performing this dml operation on these three fields like rating, phone and ownership। अच्छा, अब देखो, ये प्रोग्राम जब एग्जीक्यूट होगा, लेट्स से इफ दिस प्रोग्राम इज दिस प्रोग्राम इज इंसर्टिंग अ न्यू वैल्यू, जहाँ रेटिंग का वैल्यू हॉट और फोन का वैल्यू और ओनरशिप का वैल्यू जो कुछ भी है, इट इज ट्राइंग टू गिविंग, इट इज ट्राइंग टू गिव द वैल्यूज टू ऑल दीज थ्री फील्ड्स। तो अगर यूजर 1 इसे, अब मेरा क्वेश्चन देखो, आप यूजर 1 इस प्रोग्राम को एग्जीक्यूट करता है, कोई भी एग्जीक्यूट कर सकता है ना, यूजर 1 इस प्रोग्राम को एग्जीक्यूट करता है, तो यूजर 1 को रेटिंग तो एक्सेसिबल है, तो एसीसी डॉट रेटिंग इक्वल्स टू हॉट, सही है। फोन और फैक्स का क्या होगा? भाई फोन और ओनरशिप, फोन और ओनरशिप ये यूजर 1 को एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, बट ये फ्रंट एंड हो गया। बट बैक एंड में विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस प्रोग्राम, विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस प्रोग्राम, यूजर 1 who is not having the access on phone and fax, the phone and ownership, sorry, still he is setting, he is giving the value, he is giving the value of phone as well as ownership। बराबर है कि नहीं? कन्फ्लिक्ट हो रहा है, कुछ तो भी कन्फ्लिक्ट हो रहा है। देन कम्स यूजर 2। अब यूजर 2 अगर इस प्रोग्राम को एग्जीक्यूट कर रहा है, यूजर 2 को, यूजर 2 को रेटिंग और ओनरशिप की वैल्यू एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, he cannot access rating field and ownership field। Still with this program, user 2, when user 2 is executing this program, user 2 is giving acc dot rating equals to hot and acc dot ownership equals to private। So with this program, even user 2, with this user 3, same thing, user 3 जब है, तो इसका मतलब ये होता है कि देखिए यहाँ पे, एंड दिस इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एज विदाउट शेयरिंग। अब ध्यान से सुनो, विदाउट शेयरिंग, तो आज तक हमने जितने भी प्रोग्राम बनाए, कहीं पर भी हमने यहाँ कुछ लिखा नहीं, राइट? So that when we haven't written anything, it is always executed in user mode. It is executed in it is executed in system mode, system context, default context, without sharing. So when we execute a program, when we create a class, we haven't mentioned anything. That class by default becomes without sharing. That class by default becomes without sharing. तो ये जो क्लास है, ये क्लास, दिस क्लास which we where we haven't mentioned anything becomes a without sharing class। और विदाउट शेयरिंग क्लास में क्या होता है कि ये सारा पार्ट इग्नोर हो जाता है। तो अब कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि परमिशन सेट और या प्रोफाइल्स के थ्रू आपने क्या सिक्योरिटी देके रखी है, ठीक है, वो सारा मैकेनिज्म बाईपास हो जाता है, बिकॉज एपेक्स की प्रायोरिटी, एपेक्स की प्रायोरिटी कॉन्फ़िगरेशन फीचर्स की प्रायोरिटी से ऊपर होती है। तो अगर प्रोफाइल या परमिशन सेट बोलता है कि यूजर वन जो है वो यूजर वन जो है, जैसे वो फोन और ओनरशिप वैल्यू मैं उसको अलाउ नहीं करूंगा, तो ठीक है ना, आप नहीं कर रहे हो ना, आप कॉन्फ़िगरेशन लेवल पे करिए। वो कॉन्फ़िगरेशन लेवल क्या होता है? वो फ्रंट एंड, वो एडमिन पार्ट, यूजर इंटरफेस के थ्रू, यूजर इंटरफेस के थ्रू फ्रंट एंड की बात कर रहा हूं मैं। अगर यहाँ पे वो यूजर आता है और अकाउंट में जाता है, यहाँ पे अकाउंट में जाता है, तो उसको वो फील्ड्स नजर नहीं आएंगी। जैसे कि यूजर वन का एग्जांपल ले लो, तो यूजर वन को रेटिंग नजर आएगा, क्या नजर नहीं आएगा? फोन नजर नहीं आएगा, ओनरशिप, वो तुम्हारा एरिया है, कॉन्फ़िगरेशन ये फ्रंट। लेकिन एपेक्स रन टाइम इंजन की प्रायोरिटी इनसे ज्यादा, विदाउट शेयरिंग, देखो विदाउट शेयरिंग बोल रहा हूँ, बार बार बोल रहा हूँ कि तुमने आज तक जो भी क्लासेस बनाई वो सारी विदाउट शेयरिंग थी, पहले उसको समझो यार। तो विदाउट शेयरिंग में ये होता है, अब जब आपने क्लास लिखी एंड देन यू आर परफॉर्मिंग डीएमएल, you are performing DML, you are sending the values of fields of a particular object. आप नेम का वैल्यू, रेटिंग का वैल्यू, ओनरशिप का वैल्यू, फोन का वैल्यू, फैक्स का वैल्यू, वट एवर यू आर गिविंग, बट यू आर ट्रांसफरिंग दिस फ्रॉम अ प्रोग्राम, फ्रॉम एन एपेक्स प्रोग्राम। तो भाई साहब, एपेक्स की प्रायोरिटी आपके प्रोफाइल परमिशन सेट से ऊपर होती है। तो इट वाज गोइंग टू बाईपास ऑल दिस रूल। तुमने क्या बना के रखा है ना, वो तुम्हारा रूल है। मेरे को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि यूजर वन को फोन फील्ड या ओनरशिप एक्सेसिबल नहीं है। आई कैन स्टिल गिव दैट वैल्यू, यूजर वन कैन स्टिल गिव दोस वैल्यूज। यूजर वन, हाँ, अगर तुम फ्रंट एंड में हो तो वो तुम्हारा प्ले ग्राउंड है, वहां तुम्हारे कानून लगेंगे। बट अगर एपेक्स के थ्रू, डीएमएल के थ्रू हम अगर वैल्यू सप्लाई कर रहे हैं बैकएंड से, तो अगर यूजर वन को रेटिंग और फोन जो भी है उसकी एक्सेस वैल्यूज, वो फील्ड एक्सेसिबल नहीं, इवन दो ही कैन गिव द वैल्यू, और एसक्यूएल करके वो फेच भी कर सकता है। सिर्फ डीएमएल की बात नहीं हो रही, डीएमएल इज जस्ट एन एग्जांपल टू अंडरस्टैंड, इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड। एसक्यूएल से आप फेच भी कर सकते हो उसको। तो ये होता है सिस्टम कॉन्टेक्स्ट विदाउट शेयरिंग, विदाउट शेयरिंग। लेकिन हाँ, इसमें फिर क्या नजर आ रहा है? सिक्योरिटी रूल्स बाईपास हो गए, सिक्योरिटी रूल्स बाईपास हो रहे हैं। अगर मैंने चाहा कि एक यूजर को ये फील्ड एक्सेसिबल ना हो, और अगर वो स्मार्ट है, उसे फ्रंट एंड में वो फील्ड्स नहीं मिल रही है, वो बैक एंड से एक्सेस कर सकता है। उसे अगर फील्ड देखना है तो एसक्यूएल क्वेरी फायर कर सकता है, ही कैन बिल्ड अप अ प्रोग्राम, और फिर वो उसको वहां से अब एक प्रोग्राम के थ्रू भी एक्सेस कर सकता है। तो हम क्या करते हैं बेसिकली, तो यहाँ पे सिक्योरिटी जो है आपकी वो कॉम्प्रोमाइज होती है, यहाँ आपकी सिक्योरिटी कॉम्प्रोमाइज होती है। अगर आपको ये रूल्स इम्पोज करने हैं, यू वांटेड टू अलाउ दीज, कि नहीं, चाहे फ्रंट एंड हो चाहे बैक एंड हो, यूजर को अगर हमने कहा कि फोन, यूजर वन को अगर फोन फील्ड या ओनरशिप फील्ड नहीं मिलना चाहिए, नीदर ही कैन एक्सेस नॉर ही कैन सप्लाई द वैल्यूज फॉर, एसक्यूएल से भी करे तो भी नहीं, और डीएमएल से अगर वो उसकी वैल्यूज देने की कोशिश कर रहा है तब भी नहीं, डीएमएल एरर्स आते हैं यहाँ पे। तो आपको इस क्लास को, दैट केस यू हैव टू मेक दिस एज विद sharing. So as soon as you make a class as a with sharing class, as soon as you make a class as a with sharing class, all the security, I mean, I guess what to say for this, all the security features what is being created for that user, वो सारे रूल्स जो सिक्योरिटी के आपने उस यूजर पे बनाए हैं, with the profiles, with the roles or with the permission set, everything is eligible now even from the apex. तो अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्ट है जिसको वो एक्सेस नहीं कर सकता, तो वो यहाँ पे एसक्यूएल क्वेरी फायर करे, उसके ऊपर में एरर आए। ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर कोई फील्ड है जिसको, जिसपे वो कुछ रिट्रीव या फिर वो उस पर डीएमएल नहीं कर सकता, तो वो यहां से ट्राई करे तब भी एरर आएगा। तो व्हेन वी वांटेड टू अप्लाई द सिक्योरिटी प्रोटोकॉल्स डिफाइंड फॉर अ पर्टिकुलर यूजर, we go with sharing mechanism, and when we wanted to bypass this, we go without sharing. So without sharing is default, without sharing is default, you know, without sharing is default, because if you are taking this decision of making a class as a with sharing, you should have a very strong reason, and it's always good to have a documented reason for that. Because when we run a class in user context, in user mode and with sharing, तो बहुत सारे लोगों की एक्सेसिबिलिटी खत्म हो जाती है, काफी सारी चीजों के ऊपर बहुत सारे लोगों की एक्सेसिबिलिटी खत्म हो जाती है, ये जान लो, क्योंकि सारे रूल इम्पोज होते हैं। तो विद शेयरिंग करना या नहीं करना, है ना, विद शेयरिंग करने के लिए यू मस्ट ऑलवेज हैव अ वेरी स्ट्रांग रीजन, दैट शुड ऑलवेज बी डॉक्यूमेंटेड फ्रॉम अ सर्टेन हायर अथॉरिटी। आप अपने लेवल पर डिसाइड नहीं करें तो ज्यादा बेहतर रहेगा मेरे हिसाब से। तो ये था विद शेयरिंग एंड विदाउट शेयरिंग। So this was, I guess, the most detailed discussion what could be done onto this. Still, if you wanted, you can Google this out. But let me make it very clear, absolutely clear to every one of you. This is going to be, आप में से जितने भी लोग इंटरव्यू देंगे ना, मैं श्योर होके बोलता हूँ कि आप में से आधे लोगों को ये क्वेश्चन पूछा जाएगा। What is a with sharing and without sharing class? Typically, what is the difference? If you would be able to explain this like this, अगर आप कर पाए, which is my expectation, which I hope you can do, तो फिर आपको बहुत अच्छे से, मतलब इट वुड क्रिएट अ गुड इंप्रेशन कि दैट यू हैव अ वेरी क्लैरिटी ऑन टू दिस आइडिया। ठीक है, ऐसा है विद शेयरिंग विदाउट शेयरिंग। स्टिल आई कैन नॉट टेक दिस प्रोग्राम टुडे, आज भी मैं नहीं ले पा रहा हूँ। सो कल फिर हम आगे बढ़ते हैं गाइस, एंड कल आई वुड ट्राई टू कंप्लीट दिस मे बी। देखते हैं। दैट्स ऑल फॉर टुडे। यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस, प्लीज गो अहेड एंड आस्क। यस, एनी क्वेश्चंस अराउंड दिस एंड और एनीथिंग, please let me know if you have anything to ask. Right then, thank you so much.